So today we're going to talk about communications. I've had a few people ask me about communications during an emergency, and one of the first things to go out in an emergency is your cell phone, unfortunately. Landline, cell phones, we can't count on them. You absolutely need a backup plan. So today I'll go over some of the things that I have for communications. Not going to go over them in depth. We're going to go over them in depth in later episodes. But right now, just kind of showing you what I have, what we're going to go into in later episodes as I show you how to use these things, and also, we can talk about some other forms of communications that I may not have that I may need to get, and some that as a community it will be good to get. And the first one, and you'll probably see this if you look it up on a lot of emergency preparation things, is the UV5R. There's a Chinese company called Baofeng. They make a lot of different radios, and I have a few of their different radios, and these are all different models from Baofeng. Now, there's good and there's bad, and that's without going into an in-depth review. So the good thing is that these radios you can program using a computer. So I can go into each one of those, program certain channels, so that all of these radios are on the same channels and in an emergency can talk to each other. Now the bad news is that those radios are essentially ham radios, and because they're from China and other reasons, you actually are not supposed to transmit on them without a ham radio license or without it being an event of a national emergency. So this particular radio, the UV5R, is actually currently illegal to sell, and it's not illegal to possess, but the government, because of the amount of channels it can do, the amount of frequencies it can do, and different things that don't quite go with the way the US does their radio frequencies, you're not supposed to transmit on them, and they don't want people selling them anymore. You can still have them, but they don't want people selling them. So if you can figure that out. Now, another thing that I have is this Mini 300 world band receiver. So with this world band receiver, I can get a lot of radio channels from all around the world that, in the case of an emergency, if I want to know what's going on, and for whatever reason the local news is not letting me know or I can't tune in, I can get it from this. Now this, of course, you can't transmit on this, but it's good to have a lifeline when all communication is cut off. Now, another thing I have, which is going to look crazy, but it's a backup to a backup, is a CB radio. And this is a CB radio. There's plenty of different ones, but CB, civilian band, and a lot of people still use civilian band. Some people say it's dead. Some people still use it. As far as I'm concerned, it's a backup to a backup to a backup. But what I carry primarily in my bug out bags, and I made several for different family members, but just regular walkie-talkie radios. And again, the good thing about the Baofeng, the Chinese radios, is that I can actually program them to the same frequencies as these regular radios, plus a bunch of different frequencies. So in an emergency, they can communicate with these radios can communicate with them. But I make sure that when I have these radios, I also keep batteries that I check periodically, make sure they're not leaking, instructions, and the most important thing is I make sure that I have with the radios what our primary channel is and what our backup channel is. So in every emergency bag that I have, this is the channel you go to as a primary to communicate with different family members. If you can't catch them on there, or if there's interference on there, then you will go to the backup channel. But the number one thing that I use this for right now, as I said, you're not supposed to transmit on it legally, is to monitor the weather. I mean, you can get the weather channel, you can get marine channels, you can get all types of channels with this, and just monitor different channels. So those are the things that I have right now for communications. Please, if you have any questions, ask the questions. I'll do my best to answer them. When I go into each one of these things in more detail, I'll be answering any questions that you have. So it's imperative that, if you're interested in communications, you do ask the questions. And communication is very important, extremely important in an emergency. What brought it home for me when there was an earthquake in DC, I remember the earthquake really wasn't even that bad, but it knocked out cell phone signals for probably 2 or 3 days, and which was strange because I have a lot of family in DC, and my mother actually has a Baltimore phone number. And even though she was in New Orleans, she couldn't use her phone. I had a sister in LA who had a Baltimore number, couldn't use her phone. It was just crazy that such a minor emergency caused such a major communication problem. And my sister asked me what other forms of communication are there, and that's when I started looking into ham radio. And we are going to get more in depth and get more details about ham radio and how to get a ham radio license and how it can help our community as far as communicating. But again, those ham radios, you're not supposed to transmit on them on regular times unless you have a license. But in an emergency, it's okay. So again, any questions, let us know. Until then, we'll see you next time.